Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Well, today spring is here, and it is time to start getting the bikes out and prepping them for this year's riding season. If you have winterized your bike and you have stored it properly, hopefully this is going to be a quick and easy process. This is a bike that I have winterized and stored in the late fall, and so this is going to be my first startup of the new year. And I'm going to get this bike going, and then I'm also going to take it out on the road and make sure everything is still up to spec from when I winterized it this past year. It's easy to think that just because everything ran fine last year that I'm going to hit the start button and I'm going to be able to just rip away on my bike without checking it over in the springtime, and that's just not the case. This is a great time to check the bike over pretty thoroughly, and especially first ride of the season, you want to make sure that your tire pressures are good, all of your fluid levels are okay, your brake lights and your turn signals and your headlight, you want to make sure all that stuff works and that you haven't developed any leaks or drips or problems while a bike was in storage. This is a 1981 Kawasaki KZ1000 CSR. I'm going to take you along in the process here. I'm going to check it out. Let's look it over. First thing you'll notice, I have this bike on a battery tender. I just plugged it in. Now I've been rotating this on the tender over the winter, but I'm still getting the red light, so I'm going to wait until I have a green light on the tender before I go ahead and attempt to start it. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is check the front tire here. I'm going to look over the tread. Everything looks good there. I'm going to look over my front forks. Those look good. I'm going to check my tire pressure, and that should be right around 28 psi. And it's about 24 psi, so I'm going to add a little bit to the front tire. The next thing I'm going to do is look at my rear tire here. I'm just going to quickly check the air pressure, and that should be right around 32 psi. And again, I'm doing a visual inspection. I don't have any dry rot cracks. My tread depth is great. And I'm at about 28 psi, so I'm going to add a little bit of air pressure to this as well. On this bike, my tire pressures are 28 in the front and 32 in the rear. So we will get those set to spec. The next thing I'm going to do is check my oil level in the sight glass here. I'm going to pull the bike upright. And you may have to wait a little bit because the bike is cold and so is the oil. But I can see with the bike upright, the oil level is good. So that's a good check there. We are also going to check the level of the front brake fluid, and that is where it needs to be. I see a little air bubble right there, and that's above the max line. It's where it should be. This brake master cylinder is angled a little bit down, so I will actually set this level to check the finalized level in there, but that looks good. I'll also check the rear brake fluid level, and when I set it upright, it is right at the upper level here. So my rear brake fluid level is great. I have changed that out recently on both front and back, so we're good to go there. I can see that my running light works there. That's my front brake light, that works. Rear, that works. Got my turn signal here, that works. Turn signal here, awesome. I can see that my headlight works. My running lights work in both of these. This turn signal works. Turn signal works here. And that is high beam and low beam. And both of those function as they should. All right, now after working my brakes both front and back, I want to push the bike gently back and forth and see if there's any resistance. And I have none. This bike rolls very freely. And so that's a good sign that none of my brake piston calipers are seizing up or grabbing slightly. If the bike is difficult to push at this stage, you need to stop and find out where the problem is. Again, that's a very expensive fix to replace a rotor, and it could also cause the wheel to lock up while you're riding it, and that would be very unfortunate. Another good idea to check is your gas level, your fuel level. We'll do that. What I do is I reset my trip meter every time I get gas, and it only shows that I've gone a little bit less than 6 miles, so it should be pretty full. Looking in the tank, it is very full in there, so that's perfect. On bikes that have a Petcock that has on, reserve, and the PRI letter, that is prime here. This is a vacuum Petcock, so it won't let any gas down to your carbs until it's running, unless you switch it to the prime, the PRI, and what that does is it's allowing gas to flow into these carburetors. It's filling up all your float bowls so that when we actually hit the starter button, this thing's going to fire right up because it's got fresh gas, everything's good in there, and it doesn't have to actually fill the float bowls while the bike is on the starter. We don't want that. So I will let that fill up for about a minute, and then once that's done, I'm going to check for any leaks, any drips, and if there are none, I'm going to turn it back to the on position, and we will be ready to fire this bike up. I'm also going to look at my chain and just make sure that my chain adjustment, my slack isn't excessive. And this is just about perfect. It's about 1 inch of travel up and down, and that's right where I want it, and the chain is lubricated. Everything looks good. All right, now that we've checked and made sure that everything is ready to go, or should be, it's now the moment of truth, and we're going to hit the starter button for the first time this season. I'm gonna make sure my choke is on full. I've already primed the carburetors. Everything looks good here. All right, everything started up fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let the bike warm up. I'm going to gear up. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about the first ride of the spring and just some things to watch out for. Just like your bike hasn't run in several months, you haven't been riding in several months. And so just like the bike, if it sits, there's maybe some issues that develop over time. Your riding skills deteriorate from lack of use, and the road conditions have changed since the last time you rode. So we'll go over some of the things to look out for on the first ride of springtime, and getting back into the riding season, starting it off right and starting it off safely. Okay, I hope you guys found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.